Hi, and welcome to Nevaeh's Nightmare. This is going to be a completely different video than any of the other videos that you have seen on my channel. And that's because we're going to be talking about a topic that I really enjoy, but it's also really dark, and that is black metal. To talk about black metal, we need to understand what black metal came from. Metal was something that's kind of always been around. It's just been in different aspects of what people have called it. In the 80s in the UK, we had giant bands that were coming up like Iron Maiden. And then the US took hold and added more of a thrashy spin on it. And we came into bands like Metallica and Slayer and Megadeth. And then death metal, which is also kind of known as Florida metal, also originated around the same time, where we got bands like Death and other bands in the 90s like Cannibal Corpse and other stuff like that. In England, in 1973, there was a band called Venom. Venom kind of trademarked what we now know as black metal. Specifically, the song Black Metal. That one song specifically kind of striked it, and they were the first people to be going on stage and performing music with corpse paint. And their frontman of the band they made dark, scary music, but they just wanted to make music. Like, that was their whole thing, was they just wanted to make music. But Venom inspired bands like Celtic Frost, Bathory, Dark Throne, and more, and later on, who we're going to be talking about primarily, Mayhem. So, to understand black metal, it's kind of like a completely different genre than anything you hear. It is made to sound bad. Black metal, the premise of it is anti-Christian, it's sacrilegious, it's satanic, it's paganistic, it's anything to be scary and dark and make older women pee their pants, pretty much. That was kind of the whole point, is they want to scare people. They want to have this big scary presence and be seen as unholy in some sense. That's where Euronymous comes in. Euronymous, also known as Oystein Aarseth, and his bassist, Necro Butcher, also known as Jorn, started Mayhem in 1984. Euronymous was the main guitar player and vocalist, while Necro Butcher played bass, and they had a drummer for a couple of months, and then they switched him out with their permanent drummer, Hellhammer. In 1988, Euronymous got a package in the mail that came with a demo, some letters about how this artist wanted to be very big and how much he loved metal music and how he wanted to, he didn't like posers, but he wanted to impact people with his music, but he didn't want to be big, he didn't want to do anything, he wanted to embrace the darkness pretty much. Also in this package was a rat that had been crucified on a little bitty cross. And Euronymous listened to this demo and was like, oh my god, we have to get this guy in our band. Like, he has to be like the vocalist of this band. He's awesome. And that guy would be none other than Pelle, I'm not going to try to pronounce something Olin. Pelle Olin, also known as Dead. Dead was the vocalist for Mayhem for a time being, and as a kid, he had experienced an accident that pronounced him dead for a couple of minutes, and ever since then, he had become infatuated with death. He loved morbid things, he loved the smell of death, he thought that he was rotting to some extent, like he was a little crazy about dead things, and he also went by Dead. So when Dead was on tour, things were said about him. Obviously, he was obsessed with death. He would bury his clothes before his shows, and he would bury them in the ground and would then dig them up before the concert. That way he smelled like the ground. On tour, Dead would throw pig heads into the crowd. He would cut himself with bottles on stage. He would sniff dead crows before the show. That way he could have the smell of death lingering in his nose while he was performing. He did a lot of things. He also One of the instances where he had self-harmed on stage ended up with him in the hospital. But, no one thought to check in on this man. Everyone just thought, he's so metal, he's so hard, but sounds like he had some issues. All of the members of Mayhem were currently living at their recording house. It was a place where they would record all of their music, but they were also all living there. And it was bought by Euronymous' parents. And Euronymous' parents kind of contributed to everything. All of their parents did. These were kids that were very, wanting to be dark, evil, and disturbing, but had no reason to be. They were in a very, very, very Christian town in Norway. They had all pretty good home lives. They all had both of their parents. They all lived in pretty nice houses. And Euronymous' dad had bought this house that they were all living in, and they didn't take care of it. It was trashed. There was always things there. Dad would go outside in the woods and would kill the local cats and would bring them back in his room, and he would keep them in his room. He'd also hang cats from the ceiling of his room. He would keep them under his pillows, under his bed. Did all kinds of crazy stuff. And Euronymous was really latching on to Dead because Dead was what was giving them fame right now. Dead was the one that was giving them such a scene in the metal community in Norway because of the things he was doing on stage. And Euronymous, it's speculated that he might have been pushing Dead to commit suicide because in 1991 Dead committed suicide. It was a very, very brutal scene. It was very brutal what he did. If you don't want to hear what he did, scroll past because I'm going to talk about it because it's really brutal. And to think that he could do that to himself is just awful to think about. He slit both of his wrists open, proceeded to go up his arm, slit his own throat, and then blew his brains out. And then while he was bleeding, he proceeded to write a note that said, "Excuse the blood," and it's speculated to say, "Let the party continue." But it is said that it says, "Excuse the blood." Euronymous got home and he found Dead's body, and he decided to go out, buy a disposable camera, come back, rearrange the knife and the gun, and take pictures of Dead. And he used the photo for an album cover, which is not awesome, but that album cover made them blow up. These photos of Dead just made the metal community shock. Everyone was freaked out. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is so awesome. They're so metal. This is amazing." And you can find the photos online, but I don't suggest looking for them. They're not great. They're not awesome. And it's also speculated, but this is just rumor, that Euronymous had taken pieces of Dead's skull and made necklaces into them and gave them to the other band members. But, it's not true. Some have said that later that Euronymous said that they were actually chicken bone and he was lying, but we don't know. I hope he didn't. The same year, Euronymous opens Helvet Records. Euronymous also opens Death Like Silence Productions, where he starts recruiting local bands and pretty much deciding whether or not you're metal. That was kind of his whole thing in Norway, is he was getting magazine interviews, he was getting all sorts of stuff. And this is also kind of not what Dead wanted. Dead didn't want to be mainstream, and that's kind of what Euronymous was doing. He was making it mainstream with the record store that his family also opened and bought for him, and also filled the things with. And the record store, it's kind of funny if you look at it. It's just silly posters and swords everywhere, black walls, and a very, very bright Christian downtown Norway. And then downstairs is the basement, which leads us to the Black Circle. The Black Circle was a group that was formed by Euronymous and consisted of the members of Mayhem, a member from Thorn, the members from Emperor, and Varg Vikernes from Burzum. Post-mortem analysis and psychologists have suggested that Dead may have had something that is called Cotard syndrome. It's the delusion of being dead or thinking that you were actually decaying or rotting or that you just straight up don't exist. We can't prove this because they didn't check him for it when he was alive, but post-mortem psychoanalysis has shown that he probably did have Cotard syndrome. The Black Circle consisted of these members really just getting drunk in the basement and talking shit. That's about it. Talking all big and bad, trying to act tough, saying all of these satanic and cult-like things, but not doing anything. They were all talk. They were just hanging out there, getting drunk and saying stupid stuff. And Varg was like really listening. Like he had his listening ears on and open, and he listened a little too much into it. And Varg decides that he's going to be the most metal of all metalheads, and that he hates Christians, and that he's full-on pagan, and he believes that Norway was taken away from its original beliefs by Christians, and that he needed to bring, the way of the land back to how it needed to be. And in 1992, the first church burns in Norway. Varg is suspected of the church burnings, but no one's 100% sure. But Varg would go back to the Black Circle and brag about it. He was like, oh yeah, I know who did the church burning. And like, he was just a bragger. And between 1992 and 1995, there was more church burnings. There was over 20 satanic/pagan attacks, and there was 4 church burnings that are in direct relevance to Varg. And it's said that all the other churches that were burned down was because other people got influence. Mayhem was really, really big at the time, and these people were kind of seen as like the most metal of them all. And so other people who lived in Norway who wanted to be like them were hopping on the bandwagon of burning down thousands of year-old churches, multiple of them, churches that have been around for thousands of years, and now they're all gone because, metal, woo! Over 50 churches were targeted, and again, there was a lot of bragging. And then in August of 1992, Bard Faust from Emperor killed Magni Andreasen. The dude from Emperor was a part of the Black Circle, and he was very big in the Black Circle. And when he had got back from murdering this man, he bragged about it. And everyone went under wraps. Everyone went hush hush. There was no more church burnings from them for a while. They shut down Helvet. Like, they were like, okay, you killed someone. That was really metal, but now we got to make sure we don't get caught. And the whole reason that this dude from Emperor killed this man was because he was a gay man that he had killed, and he was approached. And he stabbed that man 37 times in the woods, and the next day went with Varg and Euronymous and burned down a church. He is said to have absolutely no remorse for the murder. Clearly, he went and burned down a church the next day, so he obviously didn't. Yeah. In 1993, Varg decided to get an interview for a very big paper in Norway, and he went under the alias Count Grishnak from Lord of the Rings. Anyways, he said he knew who was burning down the churches, and he was shortly arrested. He thought that he could pretty much brag about this, and he was saying that he knew who burnt down the churches, but it was obvious that he was talking about himself, and I guess he just thought he wasn't going to get arrested for it. But he was arrested, and Helvet closed again because they were like, okay, Varg's been arrested. We need to stop. And Varg and Euronymous, when Varg got out, started to really disagree. They were kind of butting heads, and who was bigger? Varg was constantly getting into fights with Euronymous because Euronymous was a poser in his eyes, and Euronymous was taking credit for everything that Varg was doing in the sense of the anti-Christian stuff. And Varg was the one that was kind of raising the metal scene at the time, and Euronymous was taking all of the credit for it. And that just caused them butting heads because at the end of the day, they're both not great people. They're both doing stupid, not great things. And when stupid, not great things happen, even not greater things come into play later. 1993, Euronymous dropped Varg from his contracts, and there's said to be some like payment issues, and there's said to be some like money issues and just things along those lines. But endlessly, Varg and Euronymous cut ties completely, and Euronymous told him to send the letter back releasing him from his contract. And on August 10th, 1993, Varg dropped off the contract to Euronymous, and then Euronymous was later found stabbed to death 23 times outside of his apartment. Those stabs consisted of 2 in the head, 5 in the neck, 16 in the back, and the last stab was so brutal in the head that Varg didn't even bother to get it out of Euronymous's head before he left. And August 19th, Varg was arrested for the murder of Euronymous. When Varg was arrested, he claimed that it was all an act of self-defense and that Euronymous was going to kill him first and kidnap him and tie him up in the woods and make a snuff film out of it. But no, Varg got to Euronymous first. So he couldn't do that, but no one knows if that's true or not, because the only person who has ever made these claims was Varg. When Varg was arrested, it was also found that he had 150 kilograms of dynamite in his house, 3,000 rounds of ammunition, and he was charged 21 years in prison, which is the highest, that's the max sentence that you can get in Norway for prison. 4 counts of arson, 1 count of murder, a count of holding explosives, and while he was in prison, he proceeded to make more albums for Burzum because prison in Norway, the only bad thing about it is you can't leave. You get your own room. It's pretty much like a bedroom. You can do any recreational activity you want. You can pretty much do anything you want in the prison system in Norway. So Varg was making more music for Burzum, and in my opinion, that's his only good albums. But that's besides the point. When Varg was arrested that night, 2 more churches were burned down, and what people have assumed is it was a way to show Varg that we appreciated him by burning down more churches. When Euronymous died, he was labeled the godfather of black metal, and the album De Mysteriis Domastis came out. And that album had a cover of a church, a very, very, very large church in Norway was on the cover, and it was suspected that Euronymous and Varg at the time were planning on blowing up that church, which is said, but people say that just because he had that much dynamite in his possession, and this is the last album that has either of them on it, and they're both on it. When Euronymous died, his family asked Hellhammer, who was the drummer of the band, to remove Varg's bass track, and he responded with, "I thought it would be appropriate that the murderer and the victim were on the same record." So that album is still out. You can still find it. Yeah, that's Mayhem. And I would like to point out that there is a multitude of black metal bands that were in Norway at the time that were friends with Mayhem and hopping on the bandwagon of doing all of these bad things they were doing. We just don't have as much documentation of that as we do with Mayhem. But there's equally black metal bands that have members that just want to make music. They want to be dark and scary, but they don't want to ruin people's lives and do horrible illegal crimes. They just want to make music. An example of that is the drummer from Dark Throne. He's awesome. He just takes pictures of his cats all day, and he hangs out with his cats and plays drums for a black metal band, and he's awesome. But yeah, some of the bands that I enjoy that not necessarily for the people, but for the music, I don't pay attention. I mean, I do pay attention, but I don't listen to music for the people. I enjoy music, and I listen to music. Some of the bands that I enjoy are bands like Behemoth and Deaf Heaven and Cradle of Filth. Black Braid's really good. Celtic Frost is really good. Enthroned is good. Venom is pretty good. They're another band that, didn't really do much. They were just metal, and they made music. Venom's a good band. Nevaeh Frost, Sadistic Execution, Black Tongue. Those are all good bands to listen to. And yeah, so that's black metal. That's what these very twisted individuals did in the name of being metal. But in reality, enjoy music, make music, listen to music, enjoy it. Don't do stupid things. Don't kill people. Don't destroy historical artifacts. Don't be a bad person. Just enjoy your music and let other people enjoy their music and live and dress how you want to dress without burning down churches and killing people. That's my video. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what's your favorite metal band down in the comments. Thank you so much. Ta-da.